Michelle Walshe, documentarian, the filmmaker of the really, really great film Prime Minister. It is such an honor to be speaking to you today. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
I found myself very, very moved by this film. I watched it on Monday, and uh, one of the things that really struck me was how much of a in the sort of time that we're in, I feel like we're often invited to forget about the things that have just happened because there's always new things around the corner. And so, um, as much as it's the film through Jacinda's eyes, I feel like it was also like a walk down memory lane in a sense of a time that I think a lot of us are. I mean, we're encouraged to forget to a sense. Did you have that experience when you were making the film?
Yeah, we were really aware it was an unusual film because we were documenting history on top of history on top of history. It was a
Mm.
and Jacinda herself is actually a real lover of history, and you see that through the film with the Ernest Shackleton components. But also we were having her reflect on her historic capturing of with her audio diaries. And so there was just a constant layering of reflection, which I thought was really unusual and powerful, as you say.
Particularly, I mean, there were just periods of New Zealand history, I think, that haven't been documented in this way before, and it struck me very powerfully, just sort of as a sense memory, I suppose. And what was
Not
the?
all an easy watch either, is it?
No, it is not. No. What was the impetus of the film for you? So, where did this project start?
Well, it started with, thank goodness, Clark picking up a camera.
Mm,
um, and we were, we often say on reflection, this film is once in a generation in many ways because it's such an unusual set of circumstances that allowed this film to happen.
mm,
Clark being a filmmaker married to a young leader, um, coming at leadership from a different lens. And then, of course, as we know what unfolded next, we could never have imagined that she would have gone through leading the country through some of the biggest events in our modern history. And he was there for that too.
mm,
And then on top of that, the second thing was that she was recording these diaries for the Alexander Turnbull Library's political diary project. And what made those so fascinating and unique is that they weren't supposed to be released until after she died.
right.
So she's giving these candid interviews every 2 weeks that
Mm.
we got access to.
Wow.
And then we'd built a relationship with her over a number of years through the group of companies that we had worked on the Labor campaigns many moons ago. And so we had developed a relationship and trust. And so when she finished up in power, we said, hey, what about putting a documentary together? And at that point, she was again, as a lover of history, she was in a really reflective place. She felt that it was important to capture this story, and she wanted, more importantly than anything, I think, to humanize politicians.
Mm,
And so again, it was just this beautiful set of circumstances. And I had the A team with me, Cass Avery, our producer, Leon Kirkbeck, my partner in crime and in life and in business, who had worked on films like Chasing Great with me, um, who had told tricky follow stories. That was a challenging story with a lot of footage as well. And so just everything lined up to give us this, very remarkable story.
mm. I'm always fascinated by the process of documentary making and the patience that it must require to sift through what must be hours upon hours of footage. What goes into the
100
selection?
hours, not 200 hours.
Wow. What goes into the selection of the footage? Like, at what point do you decide what kind of story this is? Because to me, it felt there is as much focus in the film on her personal journey as any kind of policy decision, which I felt was a very intelligent decision and one that really spoke to what you mentioned, that idea of humanizing a politician. So where do the decisions come in terms of like what to cut and what to put in?
Mhm. Uh, from the very get-go, we were super clear politics was the backdrop of this story, which was a
Mm,
story, an intimate story about leadership. from a viewpoint we seldom see. I can't even think of another example of a
Mm.
politician or a leader that's opened themselves up to show such an intimate account of
Mm.
something so important. So we lent into what we had, which is extraordinary access, footage that's never been seen before, and we chose to tell the story from her viewpoint and Clark's viewpoint. And that was made it really easy for us to decide, really what to keep and what to maybe leave on the cutting room floor. We made the decision early not to interview people because that would be a very different documentary. We
Mm.
love the verite nature of this, of feeling like we're alongside her during these, as you say, really important moments in New Zealand history.
Mm.
And so when we had, I think it was 300 hours of footage, a remarkable team of researchers who were finding angles on press conferences we'd never seen, allowing us to see her leave the podium in really difficult situations, like after the Christchurch tragedy, and stay with her. And they became, the guiding principles for what we chose to keep in and out. Saying that, our first cut was we had a 17-hour, then we had a 13-hour,
Wow.
and then we had I think 5, and then it went to 7, and then it went 3 and 5. Sort of accordion process.
Mm.
And even in that, we kept saying, what makes us feel something? What have we never seen before?
Mm.
And that's how we made the decisions, which is very far away from having like a script.
Yeah, I can only imagine that intimacy and frankness. I think you're right. I haven't seen that in in political kind of diaries of this nature, I suppose. And so I imagine there must be some. I mean, obviously, because some of it is filmed by Clark Gayford, there's that level of trust there, but there must be a level of trust in the relationship that you had to form with Jacinda and Clark as well.
Absolutely. And Leon Kirkbeck, who was one of the cinematographers, and my husband built a very strong relationship there too. You have to remember, like, those cameramen are there on their own. There is no director, there's no boom mic. They've got to think about, I've got to charge the batteries, follow the person, try to be invisible. Where did I leave the lens?
Mm.
So they end up becoming, in many ways, critical to what we capture. So a big shout out to Leon. I think, um, I'm so sorry, I just got off track.
No, no, that's okay. That
Oh, you were
just
saying
in terms of the
building the
level of
trust.
trust that your makers
No,
had with them.
sorry,
Mm.
you have to make that edit. The
Right.
level of trust is absolutely paramount. There really is no story without that. And the trust was also important from our perspective because we had to tell a story and have the ability to tell stories we saw fit without
Mm.
their input. So in many ways, it sort of goes both ways. It, they gave us the space to make the film
Mm.
and trusted us to be in those moments that really mattered to capture too.
I mean, it is as with a lot of things to do with Jacinda Ardern, there's a huge amount of bravery, I think, in putting yourself out there in this way. I feel like it's such a politically fraught situation for her to present herself in this kind of raw, unfettered way, allowing the human to be seen in a world which seems very punishing of women leaders, particularly in this kind of in doing something like that. Was there ever a worry on your part or on their part in terms of that element?
I think we wanted to show that additional pressure and challenge that comes from being a woman in leadership.
Mm.
Jacinda had the added challenge of being a young mother in leadership and the complexity of balancing motherhood
Mm.
as well as leadership. And we really wanted to lean into that. I'd never seen somebody else struggle with breastfeeding, let alone during a UN conference.
Mm. Totally.
Um, so the gender side of it, being a female leader, was an important part of the story. It's not all the story.
Mm.
I want young men to watch this film and see themselves reflected in her story and realize they can lead with empathy and kindness and humanity
Mm.
too. It's not just a female story. But we didn't want to also lean too far away from the realities of that.
Mm.
That being it adds another complexity when you're a female leader in the spotlight.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely, because there's this parallel that you make with Shackleton in the film, which is obviously someone who Jacinda very much admires, and one of the most moving scenes of the film is her visiting the hut in Antarctica. Sorry, I don't know if that's a spoiler actually, but it's a very moving thing, and obviously that I think a lot of the time Shackleton is thought of as a great leader and associated with this kind of masculine ideal, and I think it's a very, very telling parallel to put the two of them together, and to show that they shared a lot of leadership qualities. Um, uh, Tell me about the integration of Shackleton into the story. Did you finding that archival footage and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that footage was filmed by Frank Hurley. It's phenomenal footage. I could sit and look at that all day.
Mm,
It was an interesting choice. I think shout out to Lindsay, my co-director here, because she was the one that initially thought about mixing that footage in. And I felt like, oh, we're breaking out of verite, which is
mm,
an unusual choice. But what we reflected on was that how important Ernest Shackleton's principles around optimism, optimism is true moral courage, those types of really important guiding principles that he lived by uh, were what helped her get through tough moments. And
mm.
so it was a really important insight into the decisions she made. She talks about in the film, which I think is really interesting, that Ernest Shackleton set out to achieve one thing and then he found himself
Yes.
trying desperately to achieve another. And I think we can all see the parallels there with what Jacinda thought she
Mm,
was walking into and then what she turned out needing to do. Um, and so that integration was challenging in a verite film. I
mm,
think the editors did an extraordinary job. We had a great team, Grace Zahara and Anat City, who are very, very good editors in helping. In these docs, your editors become just like our camera people. They become a really important part of the storytelling process. They're making decisions in the suite too all the time, and I think they definitely sort of wove that through. I think it's been really powerful.
mm. One of the loveliest elements of the film is the integration of Nev as well, and her presence in the story
Mhm.
is a real kind of guiding light and a shining light, I think. And so I'm interested in what your thoughts were in terms of weaving that part of the story and her as a person, as a presence into the story.
I'm so glad you asked about that because gift number 5 on the film 4, whatever number it might be, was that
Mhm.
we had this vehicle of it in terms of narration where we had a child growing up.
Mm,
And that's so unusual,
yeah,
where we could come back into a time and see Neve and realize exactly where we were. So we
yeah,
didn't have to date stamp as often.
fantastic.
We also had you may not notice, but we actually stopped showing Neve's face at a certain age
Mm,
uh,
yeah,
because obviously to protect her. And so once we felt like she was getting into a place where her face was becoming more recognizable, we very consciously chose to have her presence there, but you don't really
yeah,
see her. Um, and so, yeah, she also reminds us as well, very powerfully, that this is a young family.
mm,
She forms part of, I think, the reason why people do come out of the cinemas and say, "Wow, that felt like you really humanized her," and it's
mm,
because we were reminded regularly that she's just a mum,
totally.
and I think
And
the
yeah,
mum with all the love in the world as a mother,
mm.
um, she was doing mum things that we all relate to.
Absolutely.
So.
And often in watching the film, I was thinking about a future Nev watching the film and having, I don't know, it must be an incredibly out of body experience to see yourself at the UN as an infant and that kind
I know
of.
there's like one of my favorite moments in the film is when Jacinda's passing gun legislation and we're right in the thick of going like, oh my gosh, she's just done this amazing thing. And then we come back out to the TV and we see Neve on the floor watching her mum, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, she's got a baby at home. It's a
It's,
beautiful moment where you just are reminded of the two worlds that Jacinda was living in.
I also think of the handshaking scene. I think that's probably going to be one that lives on in history for us. I felt.
It's funny that all the audiences all around the world, obviously the New Zealand audiences have, it feels really special being in the room
Mm,
with New Zealand audiences and feeling that collective emotion here.
mm.
But even in America, you get the same size that when they see that scene, they're like, ah, they just can't believe that this little kid.
It's it's
Yeah.
gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. The ending of the film, and I don't want to, it is a documentary, but I don't want to give away too much about the ending. But the ending of the film produced this really profound mix of emotions in me because it's very inspiring, but I felt quite devastated as well. I think that there's the choice that you make to, without giving away too much, there's a pause, and then there's another thing that just says right at the end, and it's a gut punch. It's a gut punch. And I wonder what feelings you have in terms of when you look at that footage. What feelings you had in putting that scene together at the end.
So glad you felt like that, Tom, because when we made the decision to put that at the end, it felt quite, it felt bold
Mm,
because we leave the film, we don't wrap it up in a bow. We let it sit in the complexity of the reality, which is that leadership is complex, humans are complex.
mm,
There isn't perfect black and white. Life doesn't wrap up in a bow, and
mm.
that feeling for Lindsay and I really encapsulated her time of the film we just witnessed. So thank you for appreciating that. And I'm sorry we left you in
That's
that place.
great.
But I want, we really wanted audiences to take whatever it was that they
Mm,
were going to take from watching that. And I think that moment gives people time to reflect and feel. And
mm.
that's exactly what I hope. So thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it felt to me, I suppose, like a call to action. I suppose in terms of like we should probably be doing a little bit better with this sort of thing. So that's I guess probably one interpretation, but it's an incredibly powerful ending. No matter what you take away from it.
Yeah.
And also the use of, sorry.
No, I was going to just say in the interview, I felt that moment I can take myself back and sit there as an interviewer or a documentarian. And in that moment, the air, everything just freezes. And
Mm,
all of you want, as it's human nature, you just want to fill the space.
mm.
And I remember feeling the need to just let her provide her the space to be in that moment,
Abs-
which is such a privilege to
mm,
sit in front of. But yeah, I'm really grateful that she was in a really reflective space to be able to do that.
yeah. And then the use of crowded house as well will always get my waterworks going. So bravo.
Yeah,
um,
I sneak back into the theatre whenever we go to screenings around the world. We've had you get to the point where sometimes I can't sit and rewatch things,
yeah,
but I always come back in for that,
yeah. It's.
and
I
I
mean,
and I still get the feels. So
you can't, you
it's
can't, you can't go past it, can you? What do you have any particular hopes or dreams for what people take away from it? Is there anything ideal that you feel like when people watch the film, walking out of the film, what are you hoping that people kind of take away?
hope that we've done justice to a New Zealand story that's really important.
Mm,
And I hope they come away from it feeling more open-minded about the way all of us think about politicians in that role, that we somehow humanize the people that are in those positions so that we have a better chance of coming together and being cohesive as a community. Yeah, and I just hope that it gives people space for reflection, perhaps to think about what we should ask from our leaders in terms of empathy, kindness, humanity.
mm,
That's what I hope.
absolutely. Michelle, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you today. Thank you so much for giving your time and thank you for this amazing film as well.
Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your thoughtful questions.